Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan from T-Mobile. I'm Director of PaaS Architecture over Cloud Foundry, a pivotal Cloud Foundry at T-Mobile. This is James Webb, one of our platform architects, who brought the platform in with me about 18 months ago or so. We'll be talking about our experiences in the first 3 months or so. We wanted Cloud Foundry very quickly, and we had to go through a lot of hoops to get there. So we'll be talking about some of that now. So we had some problems we were looking to solve with Cloud Foundry. Most people looking at different technologies usually have some kind of overall goal. So what were we actually trying to solve here? It took literally 7 months and 72 steps to get new code into production. And when you talk about keeping up with competitors or putting out new features that your CEO decides he wants, that's really not acceptable. It was everything from requesting infrastructure to developing code itself, firewall rules, load balancers, DNS, testing, more testing, all these things added up to a very long period of time, and it made us we lacked agility in our ability to push new code, and those same problems present themselves as well if we want to scale up. So we have a big launch usually, you've all heard of iPhone, comes out every year or so. It's usually a very big day for us and other carriers where we need to be able to handle more capacity and more transactions than we normally would. So during these events, it can generally take us months ahead of time. We have to start looking at scaling up our platforms to be able to handle the increased volume from these events. And those same steps that go into the 7 months and 72 steps come back again anytime we want to scale up or down. And as a result, we really only ever scale up and never scale down. And so we always have potentially wasted capacity in our applications sitting around for months and months in the form of these persistent servers that we have to continually keep up to date and manage the full life cycle of. And along that line, we have, I don't know how many different environments now, probably 14 or 15 environments from different QLab or staging, development, test. And all these have to be kept in sync in some way. And there's never a great story around that. It's always very difficult to maintain exact same configuration from dev to test to QA to prod. And because of that, you have generally deployments that don't work exactly the same way as they do in dev or in test or in QA. And that leads to more complicated deployments and possibly shooting from the hip and making further changes that then lead you further out of sync with what you should be based on your development environment. So why Cloud Foundry? For us, a big part of it was just the move to microservices, moving things into ephemeral containers, and looking at microservices made a lot of sense. We had some functions that were part of these apps that were used much more than other functions in the apps, and as a result, we couldn't scale up a single one of these functions without scaling up the entire farm. Another big reason was just the general shift to DevOps. It's something most companies have been talking about for years. It's a hot buzzword now. And so this was able to force our hand a little bit and get us into a state where we're able to move more quickly and really own that whole stack inside of one team, from dev to test to prod and operations support after that. Consistency, as I mentioned, was a huge problem for us. It was very difficult for us to maintain environment consistency across dev, test, and prod, and there was just so much drift there. We couldn't deploy accurately. So having a state where we had the same container deploys in dev, we know it will work the same way in prod, that was a big win for us. The whole idea of fail fast and fix fast, we've encountered this a few times before where we had applications that something went wrong with them and we didn't know about it. So we started building applications to be able to, for example, if they had a backend dependency like a database or a config server that was not healthy, don't let that application start up because it's not going to work too well. And we encountered that in production as well. We realized pretty quickly why failing fast was important and not trying to tell your application everything's fine and peachy when it's definitely not on the back end. And finally, just the on-demand elasticity. I mentioned that scale-up was the same 7 months, potentially. That is not supportable long-term for a business. So being able to scale up within minutes or seconds instead of scaling up within months or days was a very big win for us. And even on the night of the iPhone launch, we can look at our applications and say, this application could use some more resources, this one's using more than it needs to. We're able to scale things up or down really as quickly as possible, even to the point where we're doing it intraday sometimes with auto-scaling on some of these first applications we onboarded. So looking at Cloud Foundry in general, people ask, why pivotal versus open source? For us, we started more or less at base knowledge of zero. Across the whole company. So being able to get going quickly was very important for us. In addition, when stuff broke, yes, there's tons of resources out there, a giant, very vibrant, very engaging open source community. But when something breaks at 4 in the morning, you might not find the people that you need to fix problems quickly enough. So having that support and guidance from experts who have built the software itself and have supported other large enterprise customers was really a critical decision for us. Having the pivotal platform architects who assist all of our development teams in onboarding properly, following the whole cloud-native paradigm, 12-factor apps, and showing them why developing applications in this way is a better way to go about it. It means a lot more coming from Pivotal than it does for us as a platform, historically, and operations team, telling our developers how they should develop applications. And finally, just the resource level alone, yes, we can find people that are very knowledgeable in Cloud Foundry. We can hire them, we can bring them, we can train them, and we can raise up a team internally. But that takes a lot of time, and we wanted it much more quickly than that. So being able to set the stage with a dojo from Pivotal and having these export resources come in right away and really tell us what we need to do and the best ways to do it based on other experience at other enterprise customers, that was a big reason for us. So James will talk through some of the challenges that we faced across the organization as we tried to bring this about.
All right, so we brought the platform in, and we had some initial technical challenges just even getting the platform deployed. We had a lot of legacy constraints due to our data center practices, and we'll start running through those right now. Networking was our first and biggest hurdle. Our networking standard does not support layer 2 across multiple switches, so that presented an immediate problem just for even initial deployment of Cloud Foundry. We were lucky that right around that time, the 1.7 release came out that let us deploy multi-subnet in our data center, but not everything, as you'll see later. We didn't have an on-premise S3 object store. That was also a large problem for us. I think coming into Dojo, we thought we'd be able to use an NFS store like Isilon or Solera or something else. That was not the case. S3 was a hard requirement. We did not have access to an external to Amazon, so we had to find a solution on-prem. Rabbit and MySQL were a must. Our customers, we knew that they would want those services, but when we looked at it, they were not scalable deployments. It was a deployment that everyone shared. Multi-tenant deployments can create problems, especially for production use, because one bad consumer can make everybody's experience bad. And finally, our existing monitoring team did not have the ability to support our rapidly evolving requirements. We knew that the platform was going to change very rapidly, and we had to monitor the changes. So they were not set up to really service us in the way we need to be. How do we overcome a lot of these? The first thing we did was for the network to overcome the network issues, we manually deployed Rabbit and Spring Cloud services to work with our network topology. That led to large issues later, but it got us going. We created a box release for LeoFS, which was an open source S3 compatible store. That got us going again. We found a better solution later, but that kind of got us right out the gate. We were able to self-service that. We decided not to offer Rabbit or MySQL at launch. We asked our customers not to use it. Some of them did anyways, but we always gave them a harsh warning and said, this is not production ready, so if things go wrong, don't come to us if and when that does happen. And for monitoring, we worked with Pivotal, took some of the things that they had developed, and went to Datadog, and had pretty much everything we need to monitor the platform right out of the gate. Our next set of challenges were process. So the model we were setting up did not really fit within the T-Mobile standard, right? Everyone had become very accustomed and used to the process that Brendan described earlier, 72 steps to get everything in the code. That was not what we were looking to do. So how do we fix that? We went to our executives who wanted to change and got their support to help us push the processes through. We weren't looking to shove processes down through people's throat. We were looking more, just approach this change with an open mind. And that actually got us a very good foothold for the changes we wanted to make. One example of another set of changes we had were with our security team in terms of wildcard certificates. That was not a standard. We had to fight for it. We had to patiently sit with our security team and explain why a single well-managed wildcard cert was going to be more secure than thousands of individual certs for services hosted on the platform. And not just that the speed and agility that the wildcard cert presented us was key to making the platform a success. We sat with them, we got an exception, we got a temporary exception to get going, and since it's proved wildly successful. And finally, a lack of automated provisioning for necessary resources. So this is, we didn't want to be the team that had to go to every other team to open a ticket for DNS request, to open a ticket for a VM build, to open a ticket for a certificate. So we were able to, with the executive support we had, to get access to the resources we needed to be successful. So we got accounts on the vCenter. We got our own vCenter and we got accounts on that vCenter. We got access to the DNS server so we could make our own DNS changes within our domain. We got our own load balancers installed so that we could control what happened on those load balancers. That was very critical for our success. And finally, people. DevOps culture not being practiced. So Pivotal shows up and starts pitching the DevOps practice. Our dev teams didn't really buy into it. So we had to work with our dev teams to show them how to be successful with this new way of thinking. And for that, we needed more support, more top-down support for the teams to really buy into it instead of just showing up to the dojo and then going back to their desk and doing what they've always done. Interesting success there. Fear of eliminating future job responsibilities. So when a new platform like this comes in, everybody's afraid that their jobs are changing. Our ops teams are afraid that their jobs are going away. Traditional Unix SAs, traditional DBAs worry that their jobs are going to be eliminated. So we've taken several of those folks onto our team and shown them that nope, your job's not going away, it's just changing. That you're, instead of being somebody who manages these resources day to day, you are enabling others to use these resources and you can perform at a higher level. The developer learning curve. So this is something where our developers were initially resistant to move onto a platform. Again, it's just the fear of the unknown. So we hosted several sessions where we got them in, showed them the platform, showed them the ease of the platform, showed them how to use the platform, and they really, again, once they tasted it, they loved it. Office politics. So this came down to who owns what, typical roles and responsibilities, how do we get access, how do we, who gives us control of what sort of governance do we have for onboarding onto the platform. Again, our leadership wanted this to happen, so we use that as a lever to say, this is not your job to say this isn't gonna happen. Everyone wants this to happen. Instead of coming at it with an immediate no, come at it with a yes, how do we become successful?
Yeah, so talking about the actual first app launch. We had this large Java monolith that had over 1,000 functions in it, and I'm not exaggerating that. This was used by almost every line of business in the company. It's kind of middleware for middleware. It tied things together, it translated data, it was used by the frontline guys, by the website, by really everything. What we looked at were the functions in this that were the most heavily used and that were not quite as critical if they had some issues along the way. The one that was chosen was this get data usage function. And this was called between somewhere 2 and 12 million times a day, and it allows you to get your current data usage. It's very well named. So we looked at this function and said, let's take this and turn it into a monolith, or sorry, a microservice. So the problem with this is that this function was called a number of times, and trying to scale this up was that same 7 months and 72 steps we had for any kind of new code change. We can't just add a single server for this one function. We had to add a new server with this entire suite of functions in this large jar file. The same problem there. We also saw we couldn't really iterate quickly enough. If we want to make a change to this one function call, we weren't able to make just a change to that one function call without testing every other function in that whole entire monolith. Because you don't know if by changing one thing you might break something else, and so just to make a single change to that function would be very exhaustive in terms of number of testing requirements that you had. So we started the Platform Dojo, I think, back in May of last year, and the application went live for production, taking all traffic, I think, right during SpringOne platform last August in Vegas. They kind of slowly phased traffic up there, but by the end of SpringOne platform, it was totally 100% in production. So we took this application, rebuilt it as a Spring app, which gave them a lot of utility there. They used the Spring Cloud services like config server, circuit breaker. They found a bug in the first few days of running it where they had an issue with a certain type of customer that was causing a problem with it. They found that bug, they fixed it, and they pushed it through dev, test, to production all in the same day. So no more 72 steps in 7 months. It was literally a same-day fix, safely rolled through to production. They turned on auto-scaling, which we've later gone back from. We said, you should have your auto-scaling turned on to meet your normal daily demand. But we had auto-scaling turned on, so it would start at 3 instances early in the morning, and as the customer started making more and more queries of it, it would scale up to 9, 10, 15, 20 instances throughout the day just to meet that demand. And that allowed us to recover resources at night. It turns out we had the extra resources, so it wasn't necessary in this. We said that instead, have your auto-scaling set to a level where it goes above your expected demand, not just as part of your normal traffic patterns. Within the first 3 months, that function, the get data usage, was taking 100% of traffic within PCF. And since then, every other one of those functions that are part of that application, the monolith, have been moved over to PCF, and that's now serving up 100% of the traffic for that entire application, every one of those functions it had before. And DevOps team is happy and well rested. And we've got one of those DevOps guys that actually, he was application support previously, and he was so happy with the experience on PCF that he moved over to our team afterwards and supported the same customers that were his team before. He then started supporting them from our side instead. He really saw the light, so to speak, and realized how much better his life was to not be part of the traditional operation support cycle of the nighttime changes, the constant patching of these persistent servers. In terms of platform adoption, right around August, as I mentioned, is when we kind of went live, started taking apps. That's the start of this graph. This is number of application containers running on PCF, a number of AIs. By mid-February or so of earlier this year, we had over 1,000 AIs running. That was more and more of those functions moving over from that monolith that are coming over, as well as some TIBCO microservices, started carving those off because that was traditionally a large portion of our middleware traffic. By around August or so of this year, maybe around June or so, we had over 3,000 containers already running in production. When we gave this similar talk at CF Summit back in June, that's the level that we were at. We had around 3,000 containers or so. And now, 6 months later, we're at over 11,000. You can see a pretty sharp uptake of the graph there. That's the scaling up for retail season, the part that would normally start back in May or June. We did that mid-September or so to account for the September iPhone launch. And that, for us, was a huge difference. They were able to scale up their application, do exhaustive performance testing in their real production environment, and make sure that it could meet the demand they had forecast for this major launch. And from here, we've leveled out a little bit. We usually have a freeze to protect our critical applications during the whole retail season. But I expect this graph to pick back up and start climbing again just as exponentially after January 1st. So we're going to have problems as a platform team keeping up with this demand, continually adding more servers and more capacity to these platforms. But it just shows you when you give somebody access to resources and say there's no restrictions here, there's no rules, there's no limits, you can do what you want to do with the resources we give you, they will use that and run as fast as they possibly can. So if we're talking about the one slide sales pitch for PCF, this is it. Faster apps, a 43% reduction in response time across all these applications that we moved over there. And that for a lot of them was huge. It allows us to previously, we have 2 data centers, and what generally was an unacceptable amount of latency going from one data center across the wire to a backend data source. With the improvement we saw here, it's really not an issue anymore. They can run multi-DC without any kind of problems. More frequent changes. As we have more requirements, as we have new things come up, as we find bugs, we've made 40% more changes this year, and we did that without causing a single P1 incident for the entire year. And then fewer and shorter incidents. Obviously, stuff happens, but with PCF, we had 83% fewer incidents, which already is absolutely enormous. The amount of scope that we have limited to these applications as part of a microservice, when one of these fails, it doesn't bring down the rest of these services in the chain. So it allows people to control the limit of one of these problems. And on top of that, because of the way this is all set up, they had a 67% faster mean time to resolution for all these incidents. So stuff broke less frequently, and when it did broke, it was down for a shorter amount of time. And that for us means greater uptime for the business, greater revenue for our customers, better experience for our customers, and better experience for our frontline sales associates and our customer care people. So this as the one-slide sales pitch, we could just show this, and this is enough reason for us to go to PCF. So if we're to summarize in terms of what's important, number one, executive sponsorship. This was critical for us because as you're making this large transformational change, you have people that push back and say, that's not how we do things, that's not how we want to do things, that's not part of the policy or process. And you need people that are above them to say, whatever the problems are, you can work it out. This is something the overall business wants. And that was critical for us. From security, from development, from operations, we had all these people come together, unite on this common purpose of, we want to transform the way we deliver and run applications. And so without their help, we could not have done this. Fight for what matters. We talked about things like the wildcard SSL certs. We went through probably a month and a half or 2 months of conversations about, is this necessary? Is this something we're going to support? Is this something that the business is willing to tolerate in terms of risk? And as a platform team, we said this is a hard requirement. This will not work if we don't have wildcard SSL certs and wildcard DNS. I'm sure many of you have faced that similar problem with your security teams where they say wildcards are insecure. We pointed them to google.com where they show star.google.com as their wildcard search. And if Google can make it secure, then obviously you can do it at a broad level like that. And we wanted a much smaller scope, a few subdomain levels down. So we had to fight for things like that to prove to people that this is what we need to do. It's the right thing for the platform as a whole, and to really put your foot down when you have to have things a certain way. Branding and sales. It really is important in this to realize that you're offering a service. You're not just installing some software. So everyone that's using this platform is one of your customers, and like any business, you need to know how your customers are doing. You need to understand their pain points, their desires, their successes, because those things are all your pain points, your successes, and your desires. And without understanding their needs, you can't possibly offer a better service to them in the future. So the regular feedback loop with your major customers, understand what they need, what's working, what's not, and get feedback quickly so you can change it quickly as well. You're basically doing agile development on the platform just like they're doing it on their software as well. Slack has been a lifesaver for us. I've probably cut down my email by 50% since we adopted Slack. We have every one of our PCF customers is part of a centralized Slack channel. We have a Cloud Foundry Slack channel with probably 450 users now. What we found is that these users actually ask and answer each other's questions. So as a support team, we're free of that burden to a certain extent because somebody can post a question, and if we don't jump right on it, other users have probably already faced that same kind of problem and figured out how to fix it, and they can answer it, and we can pin that to our sidebar, and other people will find that later on. That has been huge for us. In addition, just the regular broadcasts of here's platform updates, here's outage notifications, here's a downstream service that might impact you. It's very easy for us to communicate with all of our customers at once instead of trying to maintain large email distro lists or maintain separate lists of every customer and notify each of them individually. When a customer says, can you add me to a distro list, we say, just join the Cloud Foundry Slack channel, and you're automatically part of our communications. Control your own destiny. This is one thing that was big for us. We found that as we went down this path, the more dependencies we had, the weaker the chain was for us, because that weakest link does break the chain. So for the things that we cared about, infrastructure, networking, we actually embedded resources from those teams onto our team. So those partner teams paired with us, and they said, here's your dedicated resource. If you need anything from networking or need anything from infrastructure, this is your guy right here. He will fix your problems. He knows how to work within the existing processes and paradigms those teams have, and they can help you get through those problems and fix whatever's going on. And finally, monitor everything you care about. Your own stuff, other people's stuff, your applications as well that customers bring up. All these things matter to you and control the overall product you're delivering. So without having a good idea of what's going on with everything, you can't possibly predict outages. It's easy to react to problems when customers say, yeah, authentication's broken, please fix that, or my application's slow, please fix that. But without even knowing what's going on with your platform components, because there's a lot of things going on here. You've got 20, 30, 40 different things that all impact the overall performance of your platform and your customer's responsiveness. And if you don't know what is going on with those various things, you're going to have a hard time tracking them and predicting problems and properly calculating your uptime. So we've got about 5 minutes left for Q&A. If anybody has questions?
Anything on the spend side? Tell us. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you give us some insight around spend? Have you lowered your spend? Have you gone higher? Give us some insight there.
So I don't have exact numbers on me, but it's being referred to as pennies on the dollar compared to what we were doing before, both in terms of OS and database licensing, number of people required to maintain uptime of these systems. Building a persistent system means you have to manage that persistent system, and so we had a team of dozens to hundreds of people that managed patching and security rollouts on thousands of persistent servers previously. So overall spend has drastically decreased.
And how big is the operations team?
We currently have, I believe, 8 people. 6 of those are more focused on operations, and 2 are development right now, where it's really platform development focused on adding new features. Yes, microphone.
Just because we're recording.
Yep.
So you said 8 operations folks. How many developers are they supporting?
I mentioned our Slack has about 450 users right now. I'm not sure exactly how many developers are not part of our Slack, but it's easily hundreds of developers across the organization from various different orgs. I think we have 3 major development orgs that we work with right now that are all on our platform, and I'd say probably hundreds from each one. Yes?
Once your development is done, getting into production, how many layers of approval you have to go through in terms of change management?
For getting our platform into production or getting applications in?
Application side.
Applications, it's really up to the individual development teams. As a platform team, we typically say we don't care, and that's not to be insensitive, just saying that you guys own your own processes, you guys own your own pipelines and approvals. Most of them at this point, I don't believe have approvals as part of the pipeline itself, but it's really before they're committing to master, they have whatever kind of process they deal with on their team to deal with approvals. So I don't really have a good answer for that from our application teams themselves. For ourselves, it's really just approval from our internal director over the platform itself, and we make sure that he approves what we're doing and he knows what's going on, and we broadcast it out to our customers. One over here.
Hello, everybody. Do you have a place where you documented the challenges you faced during the process? I mean, open for the public?
It's mostly this slide deck. It's been, internally we've understood kind of the challenges we faced, and obviously telling other teams that you were a challenge to us when we try to do this is not a great way to make friends, but I think that we're still facing some of these, even wildcard certs today are still not solidified, so we still go back to the same things. These are teams we partnered with. It's not like they're our enemies and we have to conquer them to be successful. It really is just, we're still dealing with this. The wildcard certs are not going away for the life of this platform, so we're still revisiting some of those challenges that we've had previously. Even the networking problems we had previously are still not totally resolved with the new versions of PCF. It still does cause us some headaches, but really this deck early this year is when we kind of documented everything in one place. Here's what we faced, and here's what we had to deal with.
Yeah, if you could mention or discuss how you went from push to pull, like did customers come to you for onboarding? Did you have to initially try to do a lot of support, and then later on, as it kind of got to be like now they just kind of came along, and how was that? Can you just, there's a product management.
Sure. So we had a product manager who has now left us, who we're doing company. She's sitting right here, still supporting us, but not formally anymore. So yeah, she would engage with all of our customers and make sure that they had what they need. We started out, our first few customers were part of the Pivotal dojos for the applications themselves. So they had embedded resources from Pivotal that understood what they need to do, how to transition these apps and carve off services into new Spring apps. So that was a very big benefit for us because we didn't have to support them as we were. It was 2 of us, we added on 1 more guy to support all these customers initially, and we did not have the time to support them and to keep on expanding and stabilizing the platform. Since then, we have basically 1 guy on our team who monitors the support channel. He built a chat bot for our channel so we can track questions, make sure we don't drop those on the floor. Onboarding customers is pretty easy. They send us a formatted email, and the same guy who built the chat bot also built a system to automate the onboarding of new teams. We manage all the permissions for these teams in Git repos, and then anytime they make changes to these Git repos, they're automatically applied to the platform for permissions. We realized pretty early on that trying to keep multiple platforms across data centers in sync and trying to manage permissions there as just end users was not going to be very maintainable. So we built this system out to manage all these permissions for us and to keep track of auditing and accountability and approvals, things like that. So a lot of that stuff has gone away from us. We document things as well as we can in an internal wiki, and we point customers there if we have frequent problems. We're considering doing something like an FAQ or an FAQ bot that answers questions in the Slack channel as well to further lessen the burden we have as individual team members. About 1 minute left, I think. Anything else? One more in the back there.
Hi. Which pipeline technology do you use to push your apps through your whole platform?
So the applications themselves are using using Jenkins primarily to push through. There's a team that manages an enterprise pipeline that deals with security scanning and any other processes that they have. And they've built out a number of common patterns inside of Jenkins where they assist teams with onboarding there and getting their apps deployed to PCF with common patterns. We use Concourse internally for our team to maintain various platform components to deal with the permissions management, things like that.
Thank you.
Yep. I think we're out of time. You can see me afterwards if you need to have any further questions. Thank you, everyone.